Devin stared at the $200 bills on the break room table like they were coated in poison, because, in a way, they were. Jake leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, that smirk still plastered on his face. "So, what do you say, Devin? Easiest money you'll ever make." Devin's hand trembled as he reached for his wallet and pulled out the eviction notice. 72 hours. That's all he had left before his 7-year-old daughter Amara would be sleeping in his car. He thought about this morning, watching her walk to the school bus with cardboard stuffed inside her shoes because the soles had completely worn through. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. "Tell me again what I have to do," Devin said quietly, hating himself already. Jake's eyes lit up. "Simple. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., Rosewood Bistro on 5th. There's a girl named Sophie meeting someone for a blind date. You show up, pretend you're her date, be a complete disaster for like 15 minutes, then leave. That's it." "Why?" Devin asked. "Why would you pay me to ruin some stranger's date?" "That's not your concern," Jake said, sliding the money closer. $200 now, another $100 when it's done. That's $300 for 20 minutes of bad acting. You're a single dad working 2 jobs and still broke. When's the last time Amara had new shoes?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. Jake had noticed. Of course he had. Everyone at the construction site had probably noticed his daughter's shoes. "What kind of disaster are we talking about?" Devin heard himself ask. Jake shrugged. "Show up late, dress like you don't care, be on your phone, make it awkward. The girl's different. She'll make it easy for you." "Different how?" "You'll see when you get there." Jake pushed the money into Devin's hand. "Trust me, she's used to disappointment." That night, Devin sat on the edge of Amara's bed, watching her sleep. She clutched her stuffed elephant, the one her mother had given her before she left 3 years ago. He was falling apart, just like everything else in their lives. He'd tried so hard to give her stability, working dawn to dusk at construction sites, picking up weekend shifts, doing paint jobs, but it was never enough. His phone buzzed, a text from his landlord. "Final notice, Friday or you're out." Devin looked at the $200 on his nightstand. He thought about the kind of man who would take money to humiliate a stranger. He thought about the kind of man his daughter needed him to be. Then he thought about her shoes. The next evening, Devin drove to Rosewood Bistro in his 15-year-old Honda, still wearing his paint-stained jeans. He'd deliberately skipped changing. Part of the act, he told himself. Make it believable. He arrived at 7:14 p.m., 14 minutes late, just like Jake instructed. The restaurant was nicer than anywhere he'd been in years. Soft lighting, cloth napkins, prices on the menu that made his stomach turn. He spotted her immediately at table 12. Sophie. She was a little person, barely 4 feet tall, sitting in what looked like a custom-made chair. Her auburn hair fell in perfect waves over an elegant navy dress. She had positioned herself facing the door, her hands folded nervously on the table. There was a hopefulness in her eyes that made Devin's chest tighten. She was beautiful, and she'd clearly put tremendous care into this date. The dress, the hair, the way she kept checking her phone and then looking up expectantly at the door. Devin's feet felt like concrete. This wasn't some abstract concept anymore. This was a real person, a woman who'd gotten dressed up, who'd driven here with hope, who was waiting for someone who actually wanted to meet her. But then he thought about Amara's cardboard stuffed shoes. He forced his legs to move. Each step towards table 12 felt like walking through quicksand. Sophie's eyes found his, and for just a moment her face lit up with cautious optimism. Devin slumped into the chair across from her without making eye contact and immediately pulled out his phone. "You, Sophie?" he muttered, not looking up. The light in her eyes dimmed. "Yes, you must be... Are you Daniel?" Devin was about to answer when he noticed something that made his blood run cold. On the table next to Sophie's water glass was a business card, and the name read Sophie Chen, CEO, Chen Adaptive Designs, the same company name he'd seen on Jake's employee ID badge at the construction site. Devin's heart hammered against his ribs as he stared at that business card. Sophie Chen, CEO, Jake's boss. This wasn't just some random woman. Jake paid him to humiliate the person who signed his paychecks. But why? And more terrifyingly, what would happen to Devin if Sophie found out he worked at the same company? He couldn't back out now. He'd already taken the money, already spent half of it on Amara's shoes that were sitting in his car trunk. If he walked away, Jake would know, and Jake could make his life at the construction site a living hell. So Devin did what desperate men do. He committed to the lie. "Yeah, whatever," he mumbled in response to her question, his eyes still glued to his phone screen, thumb scrolling through nothing. He cracked his gum loudly, slouching deeper into the chair. "Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos." "It's nice to finally meet you, Daniel. Your profile said you work in accounting." "Uh-huh." Devin kept his tone flat, disinterested. He glanced up just long enough to make brief, dismissive eye contact before returning to his phone. "I work in furniture design," Sophie continued, her voice smaller now, but still trying. "Custom adaptive furniture, actually. It's really rewarding work. We help people with—" "Cool," Devin interrupted, not looking up. "Hey, did they have burgers here? I'm really not into this fancy stuff." He watched Sophie's hands clasp together tightly on the table. Her knuckles went white. But she maintained her composure, maintained that dignity that seemed to radiate from her despite his rudeness. "They do have a burger," she said softly. "It's quite good, actually. I've been here before." "How much?" Devin asked, finally looking at the menu with exaggerated shock. $32 for a burger? That's insane. You rich or something?" The question hung in the air, and Devin saw something flicker across Sophie's face. Not hurt this time. Something else. Something calculating. "I do all right," she said carefully. "My company has been successful." Devin forced out a laugh that sounded cruel even to his own ears. "Must be nice. Some of us actually have to work for a living." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Here he was, actually working 2 jobs, actually struggling, and he was throwing that struggle in the face of a woman who'd clearly built something from nothing. But he pushed forward, following Jake's script. The waiter appeared, a young man with a practiced smile. "Good evening. Can I start you both with something to drink?" "Water's fine," Devin grunted. "Tap, not that bottled stuff." "I'll have sparkling water with lime, please," Sophie said, her voice steady. "And could you give us a few more minutes?" As the waiter left, Devin leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "So this blind date thing? Your friends set this up because they feel sorry for you, or what?" He saw Sophie flinch, actually flinch, and in that moment Devin hated himself more than he'd ever hated anything, because he recognized that flinch. It was the same one Amara had when the kids at school made fun of her worn-out clothes. "My colleague set it up," Sophie said, quietly. "She thought I should get out more. Yeah, I bet dating's tough for you," and he delivered the line Jake had specifically requested. "I mean, most guys probably aren't looking for someone they'd have to, look down at." The silence that followed was deafening. Sophie's face went completely blank. Not hurt, not angry. Blank. Like she'd pulled down a steel shutter over her emotions. "That's interesting," she said, her voice suddenly different, colder, sharper. "That exact phrase, 'look down at.'" Devin's stomach dropped. "What?" "My ex-boyfriend used to say that, verbatim, 'look down at.' It was his favorite way to humiliate me in public." She tilted her head, and now Devin could see something dangerous in her eyes. "He said it so often that I had it written down in my restraining order application, word for word." Devin's mouth went dry. I didn't... How would you know that phrase?" Sophie continued, her voice getting quieter, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Unless someone told you to say it. Someone who would know because he was there. Someone like my stepbrother, who used to laugh every time my ex said it." The world tilted sideways. "Your stepbrother is Jake?" Devin whispered. Sophie stood up on her chair. Not to make a scene, but but to look Devon directly in the eye at his level. When she spoke, every word was precise, controlled, lethal. "Jake works at my warehouse, part-time. I gave him that job 2 years ago because my mother begged me to, because family takes care of family." Her voice dripped with bitterness. "This is the 4th time he's done this. 4 different men, 4 different dating apps, 4 identical disasters. But you're the first one who actually showed up looking like he'd rather be anywhere else." Devon couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The horror of what he'd done crashed over him like a wave. "The paint under your fingernails," Sophie continued, her eyes never leaving his. "That's construction paint, Sherwin-Williams Pro-Industrial. I know because my warehouse uses the same brand. And those calluses on your palms, those are from handling lumber and drywall. I've shaken hands with enough contractors to recognize them." She stepped down from the chair, her movements deliberate and controlled. "You work for me, don't you? At the warehouse or one of the construction sites we contract with." It wasn't a question. "And Jake paid you to do this. How much?" Devon's voice came out as a broken whisper. 300. Sophie nodded slowly, like a puzzle piece had just clicked into place. $300 to humiliate your boss. Did he tell you who I was?" "No." Devon's hands were shaking. He just said, he said you were different, that you were used to disappointment." Something cracked in Sophie's expression. Just for a moment, Devon saw past the CEO, past the controlled anger, and glimpsed the woman who'd been hurt by this before, who'd gotten dressed up tonight with hope, despite knowing how these things usually ended. "Why did you take the money?" she asked. And Devon, who had nothing left to lose, told her the truth. "My daughter," he said, his voice breaking. "She's 7. I'm raising her alone. We're being evicted on Friday. This morning she went to school with cardboard in her shoes because the soles wore through and I couldn't afford new ones. I took your money and I bought her shoes. They're in my car right now." Sophie stared at him for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and started typing. Devon's heart stopped. "Are you calling the police?" "No," Sophie said, still typing. "I'm calling Jake." The phone rang on speaker, once, twice, then Jake's voice, cocky and amused. "Hey, Sophie, what's up?" "Where are you right now?" Sophie asked, her voice deadly calm. "Ham. Why?" "I'm at Rosewood Bistro, having dinner with a very interesting man named Devon. He just told me the most fascinating story." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Jake, you're fired. Clean out your locker tomorrow. Security will escort you. And if you contest this, I'll make sure every company in this city knows exactly why." She hung up. Then she looked at Devon and she couldn't read her expression at all. "Now," she said, "you're going to sit here and tell me everything, and then we're going to figure out what happens next." Devon couldn't tell if Sophie was about to destroy his life or save it. Her expression was unreadable, controlled, the face of a CEO who'd learned to hide her cards. But her hands were trembling slightly as she set her phone down on the table, and Devon realized something stunning. She was just as shaken as he was. "Start from the beginning," Sophie said, sitting back down in her custom chair, "and don't leave anything out." Devon's throat felt like sandpaper. "I work at the Riverside construction site, the one your company contracted for the new medical facility. Jake works warehouse, but he's on site sometimes for deliveries. That's how we know each other." Sophie nodded slowly, processing. "Go on." 3 days ago, I got an eviction notice. My daughter, Amara, she's 7, and I'm raising her alone. Her mother left when she was 2. Devon's voice cracked. "I work construction during the day, paint houses on weekends, but it's never enough. This morning, Amara walked to school with cardboard stuffed in her shoes because I couldn't afford new ones." Sophie's expression softened slightly, but she remained silent, waiting. "Jake approached me in the break room yesterday, slid $200 across the table and said it was the easiest money I'd ever make. Show up here, pretend to be your date, be a disaster for 15 minutes, then leave." Devon couldn't meet her eyes. He said you were different and used to disappointment. He never told me who you were, never mentioned you were his stepsister or that you owned the company. But you took the money anyway? Sophie said, not accusatory, just stating fact. I took the money, Devin confirmed, shame flooding through him. I took it and I drove straight to the shoe store. I bought Amara a pair of sneakers, light-up ones. She's wanted light-up shoes for 2 years. I finally looked up at Sophie. They're in my trunk right now, still in the box. I was going to give them to her tomorrow morning as a surprise. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming on the table. Show me your phone. What? Your phone. Show me a picture of your daughter. Devin fumbled with his phone, hand shaking, and pulled up his lock screen. Amara grinned back at them, missing her 2 front teeth, hugging her tattered stuffed elephant. Sophie studied the photo, then looked back at Devin. The elephant, it's falling apart. Her mother gave it to her before she left. Amara won't let me replace it, even though the stuffing's coming out. Devin's voice dropped to a whisper. She says it's all she has left of her mom. Something shifted in Sophie's face. She pulled out her own phone and showed Devin a photo. A young girl, maybe 9 or 10, with Down syndrome, beaming at the camera while sitting in a colorful, specially designed chair. This is May, Sophie said softly. My niece, my sister's daughter. She's the reason I started my company. Every piece of furniture we design, I think about her, about kids like her who need the world to accommodate them, not the other way around. Devin stared at the photo, confused about where this was going. My stepbrother, Jake, Sophie continued, her voice hardening, has spent the last 5 years trying to sabotage me. Not just these dating disasters. He's leaked company secrets to competitors, he's damaged inventory, he's spread rumors about my business practices. She locked her phone. Do you want to know why? Devin nodded. Because when our parents died 4 years ago, they left me their life insurance money. $300,000. They left Jake nothing. Not because they didn't love him, but because he'd already burned through 2 previous inheritances from his grandparents. Gambling debts, bad investments. They wanted to make sure at least one of their children would use it wisely. You used it to start your company, Devin said. I used it to start a company that now employs 47 people and generates $7 million in annual revenue, Sophie corrected. And Jake has never forgiven me for that. He thinks that money should have been his. He thinks I stole his future. The pieces were falling into place in Devin's mind. So he's been trying to make you fail. Worse than that, Sophie said. He's been trying to make me miserable. The business sabotage I can handle. I have lawyers and insurance for that. But these dating setups? Her voice wavered slightly. He knows how hard it is for me to trust people, and he's made it his mission to prove that no one will ever want me. Devin felt sick. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. But here's what's interesting, Sophie interrupted, leaning forward. You're the first one who looked uncomfortable doing it, the first one who showed any hesitation at all. She tilted her head, studying him. Jake told you I was used to disappointment. Did he say anything else? Devin thought back. He said I'd make it easy for you, that you were different. Different, Sophie repeated bitterly. That's always the word, isn't it? She was quiet for a moment, then asked, What happened when you saw me? When you first walked in and saw who I was? Devin closed his eyes, remembering. I thought you were beautiful. I thought about how much care you'd put into getting ready. I saw the hope in your eyes. He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze. And I thought about my daughter's shoes, and I made the worst decision of my life. Sophie studied him for a long, excruciating moment. Then she did something that made Devin's heart stop. She smiled. Not a friendly smile. Something else. Something calculating and fierce. Devin, she said slowly, I'm going to make you an offer. And before you answer, I want you to think very carefully about what I'm about to say. Okay, Devin whispered. I'm going to give you a job. $60,000 a year, full benefits, health insurance for you and your daughter, flexible hours so you can be there for Amara, paid time off, everything you need to build a stable life. Devin's mouth fell open. What? Why would you... Because I need someone I can trust, Sophie continued, her voice sharp and purposeful. And here's what I know about you, Devin. You're desperate, but you're honest. When faced with my pain, you felt genuine remorse. You told me the truth even though it could destroy you. And most importantly, she leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. You know exactly what Jake is capable of, because you were almost one of his weapons. I don't understand, Devin said. Jake has been sabotaging my company for years, and I haven't been able to prove it. He's too careful, too smart. But now I have someone on the inside, someone who knows how he operates, someone who owes me everything. Devin's blood ran cold as he understood what she was really offering. You want me to help you catch him? He said slowly. You want me to be your informant. I want you to help me protect the company that feeds 47 families, Sophie corrected. I want you to help me stop a man who paid you $300 to humiliate me. And in exchange, I'll give you and Amara the life you deserve. She extended her hand across the table. So what do you say, Devin? Do we have a deal? Devin stared at her outstretched hand, his mind racing. This wasn't redemption, this was revenge, and Sophie was asking him to be part of it. Before he could answer, Sophie's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and all the color drained from her face. What? Devin asked. What is it? Sophie turned her phone around, showing him a text message from an unknown number. It was a photo of them, taken from somewhere in the restaurant. Right now. Tonight. The message below it read, Touching, sis, but if you think firing me ends this, you're wrong. By tomorrow morning, everyone will know exactly what kind of person you really are. Sweet dreams. Sophie's hand was shaking as she set the phone down. He's here, Sophie whispered. Jake is here in this restaurant, and he's been watching us this entire time. Devin's eyes swept across the restaurant, scanning every face, every shadow. Jake was here, somewhere in this room, watching them like a predator circling wounded prey. And whatever he was planning would destroy Sophie by morning, unless they stopped him first. Don't look around, Sophie said quietly, her CEO composure sliding back into place like armor. If he knows we're aware, he'll disappear. What do we do? Devin whispered, his heart hammering. Sophie's fingers moved across her phone screen with practiced precision. We turn his weapon against him. Give me your phone. Devin slid it across the table, confused. Sophie opened his messages and began typing rapidly. What are you doing? Texting Jake from your phone, Sophie said, her eyes never leaving the screen. It's done. She's devastated. Where do I meet you for the rest of the money? The response came within seconds. Back parking lot, 10 minutes. And Devin, don't get any ideas about being a hero. I've got insurance. Sophie's jaw tightened. Insurance? That means he has something. Photos, recordings, something he can use against me. She looked up at Devin, and for the first time she saw genuine fear in her eyes. My company just landed a contract with Children's Hospital for their entire adaptive furniture needs. $3.2 million. If Jake releases something damaging before the contract signs tomorrow, you'd lose everything, Devin finished. 47 employees would lose everything, including you if you take my offer. Devin made a decision. He stood up. Then we end this tonight. I'll meet him in the parking lot. I'll get him talking. If he has something, I'll find out what it is. Devin, no. You have your phone recording, right? Voice memo or something? Devin interrupted. Sophie nodded slowly, understanding dawning on her face. Then record everything. If Jake confesses to the sabotage, to paying me, to any of it, we'll have proof. Devin's voice was steady now, determined. I got you into this mess. Let me help get you out. Sophie studied him for a long moment, then made a decision of her own. She opened her purse and pulled out a small device, a wireless earbud. Put this in. I'll hear everything. If things go wrong, I'm calling the police immediately. Devin inserted the earbud, tested it with a whisper. Sophie nodded, confirming she could hear. Be careful. Jake is desperate, and desperate men are dangerous. The back parking lot was poorly lit, shadows pooling between the few scattered cars. Devon's Honda sat near the edge, the box of light-up shoes still visible through the rear window. He thought of Amara, sleeping safely at his neighbor's apartment, unaware that her father was about to confront a man who'd already proven he had no moral limits. Jake emerged from behind a black pickup truck, that same smirk on his face. "Well, well, how'd it go in there? Did she cry?" Devon fought to keep his voice neutral. "She was pretty upset. You were right about her being used to disappointment." Jake laughed, a cruel sound that echoed across the empty lot. "God, I wish I could have seen her face. 4 times, Devon, 4 times I've done this to her, and she still shows up with hope." He shook his head. "She never learns." "Why?" Devon asked, genuinely wanting to understand. "Why do you hate her so much?" "Hate her?" Jake's expression darkened. "I don't hate her. I hate what she represents. Little perfect Sophie building her little perfect empire with money that should have been mine. The inheritance. $300,000, Jake spat. My mother and her father, they left it all to her. Said I was irresponsible, said I needed to prove myself first. You know what's irresponsible? Giving a dwarf that kind of money to start a business that was obviously going to fail. Except it didn't fail. It thrived. And now she's worth millions while I'm hauling boxes in her warehouse." Devon heard Sophie's sharp intake of breath through the earbud. He pressed forward. "So you've been sabotaging her. The dating disasters, the business problems, the inventory accidents," Jake added with pride, "the leaked bids to competitors, the anonymous complaints to the Better Business Bureau." He stepped closer. "And tomorrow morning, the cherry on top. I've been documenting every single building code violation at her warehouse for the past 6 months. Photos, measurements, everything. I send that to the city inspector tomorrow, and her entire operation gets shut down pending investigation." Devon's blood ran cold. "That would destroy the hospital contract." "That would destroy everything," Jake corrected, his smile widening. "And the best part, he'll never prove it was me. Anonymous tip, untraceable email, all from a public library computer." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Here's your 100. Thanks for the assist." Devon didn't take the money. "What if I told you I wasn't going to let you do this?" Jake's smile vanished. "Then I'd say you're making a very stupid mistake." He pulled out his phone. "1 text, Devon, and those violations get sent right now instead of tomorrow. You want that on your conscience?" "No," came Sophie's voice, and both men turned to see her standing at the parking lot entrance, her phone held high, recording. "But I want this on record." Jake's face went white, then red with rage. "You recorded? That's illegal without consent." "California is a 2-party consent state for private conversations," Sophie said calmly, walking toward them. "But we're in a public parking lot, Jake. No expectation of privacy. And every word you just said is admissible." She tapped her phone. "Confession to sabotage, theft of company information, conspiracy to commit fraud, and criminal threats. I'd say that's enough for the police, wouldn't you?" Jake lunged towards Sophie, but Devon stepped between them, his construction-hardened frame suddenly an immovable barrier. "Don't." For a moment, Jake looked like he might try anyway. Then sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "I called them the moment you mentioned the building violations," Sophie said. "They're very interested in hearing about your evidence, Jake, especially since creating false violations is a felony." Jake's face crumpled as 2 police cars pulled into the parking lot. "You can't do this! I'm family!" "No," Sophie said quietly. "Family doesn't try to destroy each other. You stopped being my family the first time you tried to hurt me." As officers approached, Jake was handcuffed and read his rights. Throughout it all, he stared at Sophie with pure venom, but she never looked away. She'd spent years being his victim. Not anymore. An hour later, Devon and Sophie sat on the curb outside the restaurant, the adrenaline finally fading into exhaustion. "So," Devon said, "about that job offer?" Sophie turned to him, and for the first time that night, she smiled genuinely. "60,000, benefits, flexible hours, but there's one condition." "What's that?" "You bring Amara to the office next week. I want to meet the girl who has a father brave enough to face down his demons." Sophie stood, offering her hand. "We start fresh Monday. No more looking down, no more cardboard and shoes. Deal? Devin took her hand and stood. Deal. But Sophie, can I ask you something? Anything. Would you maybe want to try this again, the dinner thing, properly this time? Sophie's smile widened. Are you asking me on a date, Devin? I'm asking if you'd give a guy who made the worst first impression in history a second chance. Sophie pretended to consider it. Pick me up Friday at 7, and Devin, no paint-stained jeans. Yes, ma'am. As Devin drove home that night, the box of light-up shoes beside him, he thought about second chances, about how the worst moments sometimes lead to the best beginnings, about how a desperate choice and $300 had somehow given him everything he needed, not just a job, but dignity, purpose, hope, and maybe, just maybe, something more. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. By the way, Jake's building violations were completely fabricated. I had the warehouse inspected last month. We're spotless. See you Monday. Devin smiled. She'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. He pulled into his apartment complex, grabbed the shoebox, and headed inside. Tomorrow morning, Amara would have new shoes. Next week, she'd have a father with a real career. And someday soon, she might have someone in their lives who understands that family isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Devin started at Chain Adaptive Designs the following Monday. Within 6 months, he was promoted to operations manager. Jake was sentenced to 18 months in prison for attempted fraud and criminal sabotage. He served 11 months. Sophie's hospital contract was signed on schedule. Her company now employs 93 people. As for Devin and Sophie, they had that second date, and a third, and eventually a small wedding where Amara served as flower girl, wearing the light-up shoes that started everything. Sometimes the worst decisions lead us exactly where we're meant to be.